Today is June 13th, 2018. I'm interviewing Colin Wilson at his home in Norfolk, Connecticut. The interviewer is Mary Louise Torrent, working with Central Connecticut State University. Please state your full name, date of birth, city and state in which you live.
Colin Frederick Wilson, 219 Wheeler Road, Norfolk, Connecticut. And
Your date of birth.
07/05/1940.
Okay. In which war did you serve?
Well, the Cold War mostly,
Okay.
and I had one tour into Vietnam.
What was your branch of service?
The United States Air Force,
And what was your highest rank?
captain.
Captain. In what general locations did you serve?
Well, we went to, my wife went with me the whole way. We bounced around the United States, but we went first to Selma, Alabama for pilot training,
Okay.
and we spent a year there. Then we went to Reno, Nevada, Stead Air Force Base for survival school, survival training, and POW indoctrination.
Oh.
From thence we went to Castle Air Force Base in California for KC-135 school. And then for my first assignment I went to Omaha, Nebraska, flying the Looking Glass and Standing Alert with the 34th Air Refueling Squadron. After they merged with the 55th Air Reconnaissance Wing, half of us went to Pease in New Hampshire, where I stayed for 2 years or 2.5 years and then separated.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was a volunteer. I went to Cornell University, and since it was a Land Grant college, we all had to sign up for something. And I got in the Air Force because it was the shortest line on sign-up day.
I love the reasons.
Uh,
Where were you? So you were at Cornell at the time, and where
Yes.
were you living at the time? Where was your home?
Windsor, Connecticut.
Windsor.
My
Okay.
permanent home, yeah.
Okay. Do you recall the date?
Well, it was sometime in September of 1959.
59. Okay. And why did you join?
Well, as I said, you had to sign up for something
Okay.
because of the requirements of the Land Grant College. My dad was a retired Air Force officer from World War II, and I decided to follow his footsteps.
Okay. I like the way you say it was also the shortest line when you signed up. You pretty much said why you joined that branch of service. Tell me about your first day in the service. When you went to boot camp or whatever,
Well,
or training.
we went to, in the junior year, we went to summer camp at Otis Air Force Base for our boot camp for indoctrination. And we were lucky enough to be close to where the President of the United States at the time, John Kennedy, spent his weekends. So he came over and absolved us from all demerits each weekend.
Nice.
So we never had to do anything like that. That was a good deal for us.
He must have known that the weekends were good, and so he would have a good time.
Right.
That's good. Neat.
And that was my first indoctrination to the military. And then my first assignment was supposedly to Del Rio, Texas, but fortunately I was delayed and went to Craig Air Force Base in Selma, Alabama, which was a nicer climate if nothing else.
And was this, so you graduated from Cornell?
Yes.
Land grant, is that ROTC?
Land grant requires you to sign up for at least 2 years of ROTC.
Okay, okay.
And when we decided to go in, you extended to 4 years, you know, went to advanced training.
Right.
And that was a pretty nice operation because the last 2 years we went and started our pilot training in a local airport, so we got to fly. That was fun. And we marched in various parades and things of that nature. You know, did whatever they wanted us to do.
Okay. So when you graduated from Cornell, were you commissioned as a captain then, or
I was commissioned as a second lieutenant.
second? Oh, that's right, second lieutenant.
So it was a busy time. My wife-to-be graduated from college. I graduated from college, got commissioned to the Air Force, and the next weekend we got married.
Oh,
So it was a busy,
I guess
jam-packed thing.
I guess so. Okay, so after graduation, you went to you did your boot camp June.
Well, I never did go to
junior.
boot camp because I was an officer then.
You were an officer.
I had the boot camp at Otis a couple of years before.
Okay. Okay.
So we hopped in our Nash Rambler and drove to Selma, Alabama. Got there in September of '63. Started flying Cessna T-37, which was a training aircraft of the time for the first indoctrination. Ultimately, we went into the T-33, which was a civilian or a two-seat version of the F-80 Shooting Star, which was a Korean War fighter.
Wow.
And that was a nice airplane, nice one to fly. And then, as I said, once we graduated from pilot training, we moved on, out back into the Nash Rambler and drove out to Reno.
So did you so your boot training, if you will, was junior year when you went to Otis?
Correct.
Okay. So was that your basic, what any other serviceman would have gone through with boot
Yeah.
training? A lot of marching and different
Spit and
assignments.
polish and marching and doing all sort of ridiculous things. Whatever your drill sergeant wanted you to do.
Right. Okay. Do you remember any of your instructors at the boot camp?
Heavens no.
No. Okay. And how'd you get through it?
I did very well.
Good.
I ended up a deputy commander in the unit by
Really?
the time we got through. I think it was about a 6-week program, but I'm not sure.
So that was basic military boot camp, or was there
That
an
was-
element of Air Force with it?
It was
too?
an Air Force operation on an Air Force base,
Okay.
but we did whatever your other inductee does, you know.
Yes.
Like you say, we marched and
Okay.
we did a lot of things like that. We got to ride around in a RC-121. It was the same thing as the, I forget what it was now. Anyway, big airplane, and we would go over and orbit for hours and wait for the Russians to come.
Oh.
Because
Okay.
it was a radar ship there.
Okay.
And, you know, we flew around with the radar going and practiced and got airsick, basically. So all about it.
That's like the guys in the Navy. You have to have that first time when you get seasick,
Right.
and then hopefully survive after that. So when was your your actual training was in Selma, Alabama, as being an Air Force pilot?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. What were your first impressions when you arrived in Selma?
Well, to be honest, it looked like a very depressed area. And we first struggled looking for a place to live and all that. Found a rental, a very nice little house at Karen Light. Most of the other guys were in the neighborhood, so we had carpooling and everything. The base itself was a very nice facility. The people were great. I have no complaints. It was a good time. We really enjoyed it.
So you would basically, you would go for instruction, you would go to classes there,
We
and
would alternate every week. Either did the flying in the morning and books studying in the afternoon,
Okay.
lectures, or vice versa. You know, the following week you'd fly in the afternoon and go to school in the morning. And it rotated. There were 4 squadrons of people, and so we had to jam all of this. You know, we had a lot of people to get through flying and this, that, and the other. So they had to keep switching off. That's why they rotated like that.
okay.
I was in red flight first.
And then, so you had training on bombers and reconnaissance and all kinds of,
No.
or did you specifically?
After pilot training, like I said, we had the Cessna
Right,
and then the Lockheed F-80. From then on, I was in the KC-135. I went to Castle Air Force Base for training there. And that's what I flew the whole rest of my career.
okay. And what is a KC-135?
And they're a refueling tanker.
Refueling tank, oh wow.
Yeah. Like we used to say, we pass gas.
I've never heard that before. I guess that's true.
It's pretty hackneyed, but yes.
Okay, so from Selma you went to Reno?
Yeah, and then to California, to Castle.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about Reno. What was,
Well, that was survival school.
that was survival school.
We went through a lot of classroom studies, you know, how to do this, how to do that, this,
Okay.
that, and the other. It turned out we normally the process was to go on what they call a trek, which is a 2-week or 10-day hike from one point to the other in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And you get there and you're captured, and then you go to the compound and get interrogated and do all that sort of thing.
Wow.
So we were there, and it happened to be Thanksgiving weekend. So they changed the routine so that we went to the compound first. We didn't get captured, we were just reported, and that was an experience. Wasn't much fun. To compare it with torture is ridiculous, what we did. But we got in, they put us in a little box, probably the size of that chair behind you, or this chair, where you could move, but very tediously, you know, to change position. And we were, I don't know how long we were there, it seemed to be overnight. And it was winter time, it was right at Thanksgiving, and there was snow on the ground. And they had a little trick we hadn't eaten. So they took turkey and made a big turkey soup and had us all standing in our underwear in the snow with this big kettle smelling absolutely wonderful, you know, all the vegetables going in it and everything like that. And then they served it to us in a metal can. But what they had done is filled it full of pepper. So we got all the aroma and everything, and you're ravenous, and you took the first sip and everybody got sick. Threw up. So from there on, things went downhill.
They went downhill from there too?
Back into the box. And then for the interrogation part of it there, they brought us in and waterboarded us.
They did?
Everybody. Yeah. And quite frankly, it wasn't a big deal. However, if I'd known anything, I probably would have told them. See, this was right after the Korean War.
Right.
And the Koreans, North Koreans and the Chinese used the waterboarding technique, so they wanted us to have it.
Okay.
We were told, don't worry about giving stuff up, you know, everybody breaks. You're going to break, try and hold it off a little while, but
right,
you're gonna break. But anyway, the waterboarding, they put you back in put a wet cloth over your head and poured water on it, and it just would sat straight. You know, it was just, they're very panicked,
mhm,
but there was no pain, no nothing like that. But like I say, I would have told them whatever I knew if I knew anything.
yeah. Yeah, there's only so much you can, so they were pretty much working off what had happened during the Korea War,
Korean, you know, from
and,
the survivors, the people who got repatriated from the prisoner of war camps and things like that.
okay, so this was before Vietnam,
Unbeknownst to us, it was not before Vietnam. It was Vietnam had already started, but we were all scheduled to go over there. That's why went through the survival school.
right,
But Vietnam was spinning up. It had been going for quite some time. When Kennedy was visiting us at Otis, Vietnam was going on there.
right,
What got me, they were already trying to get us out of there before the war really started. And come to find out later, you know, that the whole thing was a joke.
yes,
Not a joke, a tragedy.
yes, and not honest. How did you get through the waterboarding in the survival school? Was it pretty difficult, or did
No, I mean, everybody did it and you knew they weren't gonna kill you.
Okay,
You know, it was just a matter of time, it's gonna end sometime, so you just took it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same as McCain going, you know, in over there, getting shot down and being there for 7 years. It wasn't like that at all. We knew it was gonna end.
right. So that's a way to keep going, just
Yeah.
saying, if I can get through this, I'll be
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
Just deaden your senses and
yeah.
black out if you can, you know.
When you were in that little box, was there soul searching, or just trying to recover, and when they put you back in that box again, as you said?
You just tried to find a comfortable position. You couldn't,
Okay.
and you couldn't.
No,
You know, you just really
that's the
couldn't.
purpose,
You
yeah.
try to scrunch around to change your position, but all of a sudden you got stuck there. Now you're really in trouble.
Right, and you're tall too,
Well,
so that probably didn't help.
there were people taller than me.
Oh, yeah, right, but, wow. Okay, so after that, you survived that, then you went to California,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was really fun. That was a good operation.
Yeah,
Like I say, Karen went with me, so she got to travel around, but learning to fly a big transport category airplane was a lot of fun.
yeah,
But then, because I was going to Offutt Air Force Base, which was SAC headquarters, Strategic Air Command headquarters, to fly the Looking Glass, which was the airborne command post. I had to go through the specialized training for being a receiver fueler, as well as pumping gas. We had to be able to fly in and take gas from another tanker.
right,
So that was a lot different. So, you know, that made life happy. You know, it was something different than
right,
just going up and flying level and waiting for the bomber to come in or the fighters and give gas to them. We had to do the receiving part too.
So were you trained as the pilot, or to do any of the jobs, to also connect
I
to?
was trained as a pilot and a co-pilot.
Pilot
Either
and
seat, you
co-pilot.
swap seats.
Okay. But you were responsible for lining up so the connection could be made
Yes,
to fly next
Yes.
to another
as a tanker pilot, yes.
tanker pilot. Okay. Did you have a very large crew with you?
We had a crew of 4.
Okay.
Aircraft commander, a co-pilot, a navigator, and a boom operator,
Boom up. So that was the connection.
Right.
The boom operator.
who was
Okay.
also, did general maintenance and stuff if it was necessary. You know.
Did you have any experience as a boom operator? Did they train you also in that part of
No.
the job? So yours was to be a pilot.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. And then you practiced and you flew operations in California practicing
Well,
for that?
we flew training,
You flew
flights.
training flights, okay,
yeah, and we did some refueling with other people doing training flights.
okay,
And there were B-52s going through Castle, pilots going through Castle at the same time.
wow,
So we did a lot of swap with the bombers, you know, we did our, you know, it was real life
wow,
refueling and stuff. We didn't have any fighter planes at that time because they weren't, haven't really ginned up the operation in Vietnam.
right,
So there weren't a lot of fighters capable of doing the refueling.
okay. Did you see any helicopters when you were stationed there? Because that became such a big part of Vietnam.
No,
It was mostly the larger.
none whatsoever there in California. However, in Reno, our best man was going through helicopter school there.
Oh,
So I went up with him for 4 hours and 15 minutes so I could get my flight pay for that month, or for that
oh,
quarter.
okay,
You had to fly. So I did fly in the chopper, but that was all I saw of it.
those choppers were amazing.
Well, this one was a H-19, and it was a Korean Warrior helicopter, and it wasn't very amazing.
Oh, okay.
In Reno, Nevada, it was on the ground. It was practically at its service ceiling.
Okay.
You know, the altitude was so high that you couldn't really do
Oh,
much.
that's right. Yeah. But they were so important during the Vietnam War.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so was that pretty much your day, how you would spend your time in California, training and refueling and both receiving and...
Yeah, and they had a simulator that came in. It was a railroad car that they pull in there, and we go do emergency equipment, you know, emergency exercises and stuff in the simulator, which you couldn't do in the real airplane.
Oh, okay.
You know, because you didn't want to crash the real airplane.
No. And then were you able to, after you were trained on the simulator, were you also sent in the air to perform the same operations?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a way of training you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a training aid.
Okay. So then after California, you were sent to Vietnam?
No, California went to Omaha, Nebraska, to the 34th Air Refueling Squadron. And our mission there was, we had actually 3 missions. One was manning the Looking Glass aircraft, which was another KC-135, actually it's called an EC-135, that had on board a general and a staff of 17 people. It was airborne for 24 hours a day from, I don't know, when, say, 1954 till the Cold War was over.
Really?
But it was up 24 hours a day. And we did it in 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts a day. And when one would take off, the other one would be touching down, you know, so it's continuous.
Wow.
Continuous. And so that was maybe fly 3 of those
Did you fly the Looking Glass? Were you a pilot on the Looking Glass?
It was a pretty good operation. We had 3 pilots on the Looking Glass.
Okay.
Because the general was on board, and always wanted to fly and do the landings, we had to have an instructor pilot on board.
Okay.
So I got to do all sorts of different things on there as long as the instructor pilot was there, so we swapped seats all the time.
Okay.
When the general got in, the instructor pilot got in the co-pilot seat, and the other 2 of us went in back.
Okay.
But we, you know, the general didn't always want to fly, but a lot of times he did.
Okay.
But we did, it was a pretty nice operation, because there was a general. We had a nice meal every morning. I'd wake up and have steak and eggs or something like that
On the plane?
on the plane. Yeah.
Wow,
They had a steward, they had, I don't know all the stuff that went on in back there, we weren't supposed to know.
right,
But they had a lot of communication skills, running the war in case Omaha got blasted by a bomb.
okay,
The airplane was supposed to take over and run the war. Of
okay,
course, there were places all over the country doing the same thing.
okay,
Hopefully somebody would survive.
yes. So you met the general?
Well, I knew some of the generals, yeah.
Oh, okay,
They didn't, I really didn't meet them.
oh, okay, you were,
We'd be on the same
Pilot.
plane together.
okay,
I'd say yes or no, sir.
okay, wow. So that, obviously, if that was in the air 24 hours, that involves some refueling too.
No, actually, we could fly 8 hours easily with the tanker,
Okay,
you know, so with the 200,000 pounds of fuel on the airplane, so that was enough to get you through 8 hours easily.
okay,
When they had a exercise, in other words, a phony alert or a simulated attack, then we'd go into what was called red orbit, and then we would refuel.
okay,
Red orbit was a place up in the southwest corner of Nebraska, and we'd just go around in circles
okay,
and try to stay out of everybody's way, but we'd have to refuel 2 or 3 times.
okay.
And that we were limited by the amount of oil in the engines,
Wow. So
but you'd stay there, you know,
you'd
for
stay there.
36, 40 hours.
So when you were on a plane, and I know they have titles, that was a refueling plane. How much gas did it carry? How much fuel did it carry?
It's called a tanker,
Tanker.
and it carried 200,000 pounds,
Wow.
divided by 8.6 to get gallons, you know.
Okay. And so it could fuel several planes and then have to go back, and would you get another tanker or would you refuel that one again?
In red orbit,
Yes.
they had a continuous flow of tankers
Okay,
coming in.
tankers coming.
Whenever you needed one, there was a new one.
Okay. And what about as part of your training with the tankers? Would you use all the fuel and then go back and get another tanker that had then
No.
been refueled on the
What we
ground?
would do is we would go for a normal training mission. We'd take off and the navigator would practice and say go from Omaha to Denver. And coming back from Denver, the bomber would meet us and we'd do a rendezvous and refuel and do that. And then we'd go back in the middle of the night and do touch and goes and do our practicing and training on the airport.
Okay.
And so, see, a lot of people had to get training.
Yeah.
There was a constant, you know, everybody had to get training
Everyone that was in, okay.
all the time. So you didn't, the same people just didn't do the same thing all the time. You had to do everything.
Were you ever a trainer, or were you were trained and you were mostly a pilot or co-pilot?
Mostly pilot, co-pilot.
Okay. So you said in Nebraska there were three things. You had the looking glass, and then were there other things?
Yes,
Other operations?
Then we had an alert commitment, which in case of an emergency war order, we would launch, refuel a bomber heading overseas,
Okay.
and then recover wherever we could. The other job was a strip alert. We were there in case of emergencies in the air, and we could launch and refuel somebody. We had Lincoln Air Force Base not far away, and they
Okay.
had B-47s, which were on their last legs. So we would launch a strip alert quite often to refuel the B-47s when they were ferrying them down to the boneyard or something like that. You know,
Wow.
But that was the only time I ever launched on strip alert.
Okay. So you had all those experiences while you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how long were you there in Nebraska?
Oh, gee. got there in, I think, March of '65 and left around June of '57,
Okay.
'67.
Oh, all right, so a couple of years.
Yeah, just about. Then they decided to change the operation. The other thing we've been doing in Offutt was supplying a aircraft for what they call the Thule Monitor, which is a bomber orbiting over Thule, Greenland, 24 hours a day.
Okay.
And we would fly up to Fairbanks, spend a week going across the top of the world, refueling the bomber. And if the bomber broke down for some reason, we had to take up the orbit and stay there. The aircraft was over Thule in case they figured that would be the first bomb to hit, be Thule. And if we were looking down, we'd see it over. We'd call them up and say, "Hey, we're at war."
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay. No. Right. Okay.
But that was another thing that took a lot of time, flying to Anchorage, and Fairbanks.
To Fairbanks.
And we did the Thule Monitor thing, which took a lot of time, and also we had Detachment 1 of the 55th, which is a reconnaissance unit. These were the people going to the Russian nuclear test sites and airports and all that stuff, and doing the same sort of thing that Francis Gary Powers was doing in his U-2, taking pictures of it. Only these airplanes recorded everything and got all the radar frequencies and radio frequencies and everything. In other words, they got all the information, so if we send bombers in there, they had the stuff to counteract the radars and things there. So that,
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big deal. Anyway, Detachment 1 of the 55th was quite a sharp unit, and they I don't think they ever lost anybody. The people doing things like that, there was over 100 people killed by the Russians and the North Koreans and the Chinese doing that. They called them ferrets. They were shot down for one reason or another.
In the reconnaissance planes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they weren't in the 135s. So the 135s were a little bit different because they had much more capability than the earlier planes. The earlier planes were like B-29s and
Right.
KB-50s, which was a modern B-29, and Electras and P-2s from the Navy and all that sort of thing.
I
But,
interviewed my former eye doctor who was he was in the Air Force during Korea, and he was sent to Seoul, and he developed film from the reconnaissance planes. Amazing stories. He said he pretty much only developed the film, but he said sometimes he would sit with the analyst, and they would fly over to, as you say, to direct the bombers where to go. And they wanted to prevent North Korea from coming down and bombing over the border. And at one point, North Korean bombers kept coming, and they couldn't figure out why they kept coming. So they sent the reconnaissance planes out again to take pictures. And Dr. D'Angelo told me about, he sat with the analysts and compared. He said, Dr. D'Angelo, go get me these shots from such and such a date. And he compared them, and what they had done is that they, when they bombed, it would create like a hole, and there would be a site that you could see where you had bombed.
A crate.
A crate. Well, they kept moving. They found out later they would move the sites of these crates so it would look like that it was totally wiped out. And then they figured out that's. He said the analysts figured out that's what they were doing, and then sent bombers out from that. So really fascinating. And he did say that they had lost a couple of the reconnaissance planes because of that.
More than
It was
a couple.
very treacherous. Yeah. During
Well,
his time.
we took the films when they brought them in at the time and brought them down to Offutt for it. That's where they were analyzed and everything.
Right.
And that is why they decided to merge the 34th with the 55th and bring the 55th down to do the looking glass stuff.
Okay.
Because they had the stuff in their airplanes, so they'd get it there immediately,
Right.
rather than going to Fairbanks and putting it on our plane and bringing it down.
Well, that was the technology of the time. I
Yes.
mean, now you've got the satellites and everything.
Yes.
But amazing how the military has developed all this technology as the need arose. It really is incredible.
Yes, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Okay, so was that pretty much, okay, you went to a Fairbanks. Was this the time when you were out of Omaha?
Yes,
That you were sent
Still
up
in
there too? Okay, still in Omaha. And then after Omaha, where did you go?
then we moved to Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Okay,
Karen wanted to get closer to her family. So we decided, we had an option to stay at Offutt or go to Pease, so we went to Pease, which was a nice area to be in, you know, the seashore and this, that, and the other.
oh yeah,
But it was a typical Strategic Air Command operation, you know. From there on, I spent my time on duty either training in the airplane or sitting in the, what they call the mole hole, which is an underground facility. And we had to be able to get to the airplane and airborne in 15 minutes. That was the ballistic missile early morning time that they set. So we were in the hole in the ground near the runway, and when the klaxon went off, we ran out, started our engines, and usually didn't go anywhere,
okay.
but started
Just for
the
the time
engines.
that you could get out there.
Yeah, then
Well, and
started-
also Maine at the time, that was at the end of the coast, so, you know, on the eastern coast.
Yeah,
So that was also, there's some worry then too.
well, we had 2 bases in Maine. We had one in Plattsburgh, New York. We had Pease and Westover. I mean, we had a lot of airports around there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was closer to the targets.
To the targets, yeah.
So our job as tanker pilots was not to give them gas to get to their target. Our job was to give them enough gas to get back if they survived the bomber. So that's what we did.
Okay,
We practiced for doing that.
okay,
We had a mission, we had a place to recover with when we gave them all our gas, and then we'd land the airplane, and I don't know what we did after that.
okay. Wow. And how long were you there?
Until I got out, so that was the spring of '66 to October '68.
When were you commissioned to captain? Promoted to captain?
It's on the thing there, I think.
Oh,
I
okay,
think it was '67.
okay. Was it when you were
66, maybe.
Omaha?
No, it was at Pease, I believe.
Oh, it was, oh, okay.
Yeah, I was promoted to first lieutenant at Offutt, and then captain at Pease
Okay, first lieutenant where? I'm sorry.
when I was at Offutt
Okay,
in Omaha.
okay. I forgot that. Yeah, my one brother went to West Point Army, and then another brother was in ROTC at LaSalle. He was Army too. He was armor, and he went to Desert Storm. He was a tank commander, but anyway, so yeah, I remember the first lieutenant, second lieutenant, captain.
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't serve in Vietnam?
Well, no, I never was in Vietnam except landing at Tan Son Nhut a couple of times, you know, en route back. I went over on what was called a Young Tiger mission, which was about 5 or 6 months mission. And we all wanted to do it because being in the mole hole all the time wasn't much fun. So we wanted to get over there. So in the fall of '67, I went over there as a co-pilot with another crew. And we did our Young Tiger out of Thailand, Utapao, which was down in the Gulf of Siam, and then Tak Lee, which was a little bit north and east of Bangkok.
Okay. So you supported, you refueled jets or bombers or?
We at that point, the bombers, the B-52s, if they were at Utapawa, they had enough gas, so they didn't need any refueling because it was such a short distance. If they're coming out of Guam or Okinawa, then they did have to refuel,
Okay.
but I didn't do that because they had people stationed there to do that. Our job was to refuel the fighters. There was, let's see, Takli and Karat and Udorn and Ubon with the F-105 and F-4 bases, and they were all in Thailand. The reason they were in Thailand was because Johnson wanted to keep the number of people in combat over there a secret. So he put all the Air Force, or most of the Air Force, into Thailand.
Oh.
And so then they didn't count them as people in Vietnam, okay?
Yes.
So we got this bunch of F-105s, which is a fighter bomber,
Yes.
and they were going over in very well-defended areas like Haiphong and Hanoi and this, that, and the other. The F-105 didn't have the capacity to take off with a full load of gas and a full load of bombs.
Oh.
Okay, so that's where the tankers came in. They could take off with a full load of bombs, and we'd refuel them. Then they could go drop their bombs, and then they come back out, we'd refuel them, and
Okay.
go back. If they had filled up with gas instead of bombs, what's the sense of going to Hanoi?
Yeah, right,
You know, it's-
right.
So that was the deal.
Oh, okay.
If they had been in Vietnam
Yeah.
themselves, you know, they would have had the fuel probably to do the operation.
Right, because
Our whole reason for being was because of the perception of the government to buffalo the public and Congress, actually.
Okay. So, but in Thailand, these were mostly the bombers. Obviously, the helicopters were. Was that were the helicopters Air Force or were they Air Force
Oh,
and
they were mostly Army.
They were.
Yeah, we had Air Force choppers too, but
Okay.
mostly Army. And
Okay.
in Thailand, at Nakhon Phanom, they had a dust-off, which was the Red Cross helicopters. They had a unit there that dropped flares on the Ho Chi Minh Trail at night, so the people could see if there was activity there. They had a bunch of Jolly Green Giant, which were rescue helicopters that go in and get the fighter pilots out when they got shot down. And then they had a bunch of A-1Es, which was a cover for the A-1E was a World War II fixed-wing propeller airplane, but very tough and very slow and very fuel friendly, so it could stay there on station an awful long time.
Okay.
So that was another group, but that was right on the border of Vietnam and North Vietnam, Thailand.
Oh, okay.
In
Yeah,
Laos,
because
right
they
up in the
didn't
corner
have
there.
they didn't have the capacity to fly from Thailand to do their missions. So they were on Thailand. These helicopters that you told me about.
The Jolly Green Giants, well, they were there to rescue people
Right.
that were shot down. They'd go anywhere they could.
Okay.
They were all over too. They weren't just there. There was a bunch of them there. The dust-off people would go in when there was an emergency evacuation, you know, to get people out.
Did you ever visit with those pilots at all?
No, never landed there.
You never landed there.
I don't think the runway was long enough.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. When you were in Thailand, though, did you ever talk to any of the pilots, like the bomber pilots or anything? Was there any camaraderie there where you could,
Oh yeah,
where they would tell their stories and?
we'd go to the strike briefing every morning,
Oh, you did. Okay.
and when I got over there, when I got to Thailand, I first in Utapawa, I walked into the officers' club to get lunch, and one of my buddies from pilot training was there, It was the B-52s.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
didn't say anything that said, Coke, they're trying to kill us.
Oh,
They're just gonna try and kill us, which proved true, you know, in linebacker too. But that was a first perception that things weren't going very well over there. When I got to Takli, one of the squadron commanders was an instructor of mine from Craig.
okay.
So he told me the whole dirty story about how they're running the war and how bad it was. And I got into the briefing there and I was shocked because those kids were scared. They were really scared. Well, they should be, you know.
Yes.
None of them were getting 100 missions in before they got shot down.
Right.
And but I was surprised that it was such a shoddy operation.
So that's when you found out when you were in Thailand,
Yeah,
and you could talk.
I really didn't know. We didn't know anything about what was going on until we got
No,
there.
because you got a different story from the.
Well, nobody else had been there either, you know,
Okay.
or they weren't talking.
Yeah.
But they, the whole operation was scary.
And so many of these kids, as you say, boys,
Well, they were my age.
were drafted or whatever, or enlisted so they wouldn't be.
Well, not the Air Force guys.
Not the Air Force guy.
The-
Pretty
the
much
dra-
just.
The draftees, that was worse. That was murder.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
I mean, the Air Force guys probably weren't drafted.
Okay.
You know, they usually weren't.
Okay.
The Marines,
Marines.
the Army, those guys were drafted more than the other two services.
Okay.
And to them, it was terrible. This is volunteers that are scared.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like,
No. Yeah.
And but anyway, that's my my time over there was there. I was there long enough to get back just before Tet.
Oh, just before Tet. Okay.
We got done with our time there just before Tet, and about the second thing after I kissed Karen was I put my paperwork in for separation before they decided to send me back in a fighter or something.
Yeah, that's what happened. I interviewed Jim Stotler a couple weeks ago, and he said he was all set to get out. He was something about a 90-day leave, and he was engaged to Sandy, and she was making all the wedding arrangements. And then Tet happened, and he got called back again.
Yeah.
No choice.
Well,
He was.
I put my 5 years in.
Right.
Okay, so my contract was up.
Right.
But if they gave me orders to extend before I put my paperwork in to get out,
Right.
I was caught.
Okay.
So the first thing I did was go to personnel and put in my paperwork.
Okay.
So that from that point on, I was a co-pilot, not an aircraft commander anymore.
Okay.
And the pay was the same, so that was fine by me. You know.
Right. And then at least you could see the end in sight. Did you okay, so you did have some battle training in a way. Were there any casualties in your unit? Anybody that you had worked with either through ROTC or been assigned with, or?
Well, a couple of my classmates were POWs.
Oh.
I don't know about a lot of them. I just
Okay.
don't know.
Okay.
They sort of dropped off the radar, so I wonder. I never went to the Vietnam Memorial to go through the ritual. I went to it, but I didn't, check all the different spots, with the different names and everything.
Right.
So I don't know. But one of our B-52s flying over there, the wing fell off, so that killed that crew. There was 10 of them out of Guam. Like I say, there was a couple in my class that were POWs. A couple of kids I went to Loomis with were killed over there, but not in the Air Force. I think the other guys all got back.
Okay. How did you stay in touch with your family? Well, Karen was with you
Well,
pretty much the whole time,
except over there,
except when you were sent to
and we rode every day.
Thailand. Did you keep in touch with your family too, or was it pretty
there
much you and Karen?
No, I didn't, it was just the two of us, pretty
Okay,
much. I mean, we were friends with all our parents and everything, but
Yeah.
they had their own life,
okay.
we had ours.
Was the food pretty good?
Food?
Food?
I don't know,
Yeah, because you want an Air Force base, some of these questions are a little bit.
the Thai food was pretty good,
Oh, yeah?
but it was hot, spicy.
Did you have enough supplies for what your job was? You didn't have to worry about?
No, we didn't have
Okay.
any logistics problems.
It was all, the plane was, or the
Top
fuel
notch.
thing. Okay, good. Did you ever feel pressure or stress?
Couple of times, I guess.
Yeah, and how did you handle it?
Well, I've survived, so pretty well.
Okay. Did you have anything special for good luck?
Nope.
Okay. How did people entertain themselves on the bases?
Stateside, it was quite an active community. You know, a lot of parties and stuff like that. In Southeast Asia, they drank mostly.
Yeah.
That wasn't very easy because you had to get up at 3 in the morning, you know.
Okay.
So the one thing I did notice was I wrote Karen a letter every day with my thoughts on what was going on over there. And she said she didn't get most of those letters, so I expect that
Oh.
they went through them
Oh.
and decided that I was not a good camper.
Interesting. Did she did you keep the letters that you did write to her? Or?
No.
Yeah, that was a part you wanted to go. Did you see any USO shows or entertainers? No, because you were stateside. Did you go on leave?
I had one leave to Bangkok, one R&R they call it.
How was that? Did you have a?
Oh, it was okay. See downtown Bangkok.
Yeah.
You know, it was very scenic. We went on a tour of the Klong and all that sort of stuff. Went through a bunch of Buddhist temples. Well, no, it was interesting. Went
Yeah.
to a place called Timland.
Timland?
Timland, which is sort of a Thai Disneyland,
Really?
but it didn't have rides. It had elephants doing work and, you know, moving logs and stuff like that, and
Interesting.
kickboxing and all the stuff that the Thai people do.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
that was interesting too.
Totally different culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some pictures, but I don't know where the heck they are. The 8mm film, you know, is long gone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what Dr. D'Angelo used to, he used to produce them all the time. Were there any humorous or unusual events?
Oh, I suppose so. I don't recall
But
any.
not that you recall. Okay. Where did you think of your officers and fellow servicemen? Because you were an officer too, so.
At Offutt, all the officers were first class. They were really sharp people. Our squadron commander was a full colonel, and a very nice guy, and he set the whole tone. When we got to Pease, a real jerk came in as squadron commander. It's another reason to get out.
Right.
And also we merged with a group from Barksdale, which was the 509th.
Okay.
So we merged two different cultures, if you will. And so there was a lot of irritation between, what would you say, friction between them,
Really?
just because of their cultures.
Because the two cultures.
They were they did things, everybody did something the way they wanted to do it, the old way, and
Okay,
nobody wanted to change.
okay.
And there was some animosity between a couple of rednecks and some of the black airmen too,
Yeah,
which was ridiculous.
yeah. Unfortunate,
You know,
yeah. I've heard some pretty bad stories, but
especially the southern boys. You know, when they came up from Barksdale.
yeah. That's unfortunate. I heard some pretty bad stories in World War II about how the Jews were treated too.
Well, they were.
Yeah. By our military, not just Germany, but anyway. Did you keep a journal? No. No, okay. So where were you when your service ended?
I'm sorry?
Where were you when your service ended?
I was at Pease.
You were Pease. And tell me about that day and being discharged.
Well, I signed out, you know, I turned in all my equipment that was loaned to me and got in my 1954 Jaguar Roadster, which I had
Ooh.
rebuilt. That's what I did when I was on alert. We could go to the body shop or the auto shop, which was right next to the alert facility. So I rebuilt the Jag there.
Oh, neat.
And coming down 494, the engine quit, blew up. So that's how I spent my.
Oh no!
So Karen was behind me in the station wagon, and we threw a chain around the Jag and towed it home. That's how I spent my first day out.
Were you able to rebuild it again, or
No,
you
that
gave
was,
up? Oh.
I was done with it. I'd done my. Just replaced put another engine, not a new one, but another engine in it.
What was your homecoming like? Did you go to see your families
Yeah,
too?
went right to my house. Karen's mother at the time was living right next door, so
Okay.
it was a nice reunion. But we'd seen them, you know, once we got to Pease, we could come home on the weekends.
Oh, that's right too. Yeah. And where were you living at that time?
In Windsor.
Oh, in Windsor. Okay. What did you do in the days and week afterwards?
Look for a job.
Okay. Did you go back to school? You had already had college, right?
Mhm.
So you didn't use any benefit of the GI Bill?
No, I interviewed with a couple of airlines. I interviewed with American, and they said they'd give me a job, but they kept slipping the date. So I got a Christmas card from a couple of my squadron mates saying that they were in Minneapolis at Northwest, and they're hiring. So I went out there and got a job.
Oh, okay. I
So
knew
we
you were
moved to
a pilot.
Minnesota.
Okay. Oh, you moved to Minnesota?
Yeah,
Because that was their hub?
yeah. At the time, Minnesota, Minneapolis, and Seattle.
Oh, okay.
So we lived there 14 years.
Huh. Now, where was your, where did you usually fly? Were you stateside or did you fly overseas too? For Northwest?
For Northwest, both, wherever,
Oh, okay.
depending on the equipment. 727 was pretty much stateside. The 707, DC-10, and 707 were all international, or a lot of international.
Oh, okay. Was Karen ever able to go with you and
I
do
took her
some
on one
traveling
trip.
together? One trip?
Yeah, that was enough for her. It was one that left early, very early in the morning, and made all the bounces all the way out to Seattle. And we had 18 hours there, and left at midnight, did all the bounces back.
Oh, geez. Okay, she was cured.
So she never wanted to go again. But we had a good meal there.
Well, that was good. Seattle's supposed to be a beautiful city too.
Well,
Yeah, but you couldn't.
Seattle's
enjoy it.
fallen apart fast.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Did you make any close friendships in the service?
No,
No.
the friendships that I made in college carried over to the service, and they're still friendships today. But
Okay.
because 3 of the guys in my wedding party went to Craig were there at the same time I was, and they were all in the Air Force. And so we still correspond.
You still correspond? So your career after your service was as a Northwest pilot. How did your military experience, this is, I've got two heavy questions coming up. How did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
Well, I don't think war is really a good deal. When Bush went into Iraq, I said to Karen, my God, here we go. And it's been the war ever since.
Yeah.
I hope we can solve all that. I don't know. It's soured me. When you find out your government's lying to you and doing things counter to what they say their end result is,
Right.
making it impossible, how can you have any trust anymore?
Right. And especially at the expense of
All
the soldiers.
the dead and maimed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially the draftees that they were forced to do it, you know, they're conscripted.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a hawk. I believe in strength,
Right.
but I don't believe in using it.
Did you join any veteran organizations
No.
afterwards? Did you ever go back for any reunions?
No.
Or just keep in touch with those buddies?
Yeah. My
Okay.
motto is never look back. Did the same thing out with the airline, you know, I never joined anything there and never looked back.
That's kind of the way Don feels about retiring.
Well,
I did my thing, I've done a good job.
yeah.
Yep.
You live there, you do your work and you keep your head up,
Right.
and when you leave, you leave.
Yep. And you're proud of what you did because
Yeah.
you did what you were
And
supposed to.
you can't go back.
Right. Exactly.
It's
You can't
different.
change it.
Yeah.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Well, dramatically.
Yeah.
You know, it was a good. Well, number one, I learned a trade, so I went to the airline after that. So that was a big effect. And seeing the destruction up close is another big effect. You know, to change your perspective. And was that the question?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add that hasn't been covered?
No, I don't know what to add.
Okay. Thank you, Coke, so much for letting me interview you, and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.